All right, let's get started. My name is Allison Rendelman, and I'm the team lead of the Customer Success Associates here at YCharts. My co-host for the webinar today is my friend and colleague, Greg Cagley. Today, Greg and I are going to talk about 5 key economic indicators we think you should be watching and how you can best leverage YCharts in monitoring these indicators. If you have questions during the webinar, you can submit them on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll follow up soon with the information you're looking for. Please note that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, a recording of this webinar will be made available on the Support Topics page of YCharts, and a copy will be sent to all attendees. Now I'm going to pass it off to Greg to get us started.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Allison. My name is Greg Cagley, and I'll be your co-host for today's webinar. A little bit about me. I've been a customer success manager with YCharts for close to a year now. In a previous life, I worked in a similar role for another company in the same space and was even a financial advisor myself for a short while. So enough about me. As Allison alluded to, today we are going to be looking at 5 different economic indicators that we feel have either been historically relevant when telling the story of bear markets or relevant for what's driving the market today. Additionally, we'll be highlighting some YCharts capabilities that can help you monitor, stay informed, and present this information to your clients in various ways. Let's get the party started. Allison, could you please flip over to YCharts.com for us? All right, thank you. I'm going to start us out in our economic indicators page as a nice refresher. This page can be found by clicking the Data tab at the top of the screen, then selecting Economic Indicators. This page is a great place to start when you're organizing your thoughts and identifying the indicators you would like to use for your specific use case.
So, Greg, can you tell us why would someone come to this page rather than simply searching by a keyword or indicator that they want?
It's a great question, Allison. So searching by keyword can be helpful in a lot of cases, but YCharts has close to 500,000 different economic indicators in the system. For a lot of them, we have several variations related to different frequencies of data, regions represented, so on and so forth. The economic indicators dashboard can make zeroing in on the indicator you'd like to use a bit easier. It helps by providing context. So you'll notice the page is organized in different ways. Indicators are grouped by various categories towards the top middle of the page there. Commonly used indicators are listed towards the bottom of the screen. And other information like calendar of release dates can be found on the right-hand side. It's from this page that we'll be kicking things off with our first item by talking about consumer sentiment. I feel it's one of the most commonly represented indicators in the various market update style of communications my clients produce for their own clients. As I'm sure our audience is aware, when consumer sentiment is high, consumers make more purchases. When confidence is low, the consumers tend to save more and spend less. Consumer sentiment typically increases when the economy expands and decreases when the economy contracts. So let's hop back to that indicator landing page in YCharts.com. In this case, we're talking consumer sentiment, so I can hop to the sentiment surveys link found under the Markets, Economic Activity, and Sentiment section. If you're not too familiar with what everything is in here, a Control F to search for keywords can help you identify exactly what you're looking for. Here, you'll see a summary of information about some of the more often used indicators related to sentiment, as well as a listing of those indicators towards the bottom of the page. After reviewing some of the options, I'm going to select the U.S. Index of Consumer Sentiment. And I actually learned while preparing for this webinar that the index is based on a monthly survey of consumers that consists of about 50 questions relating to consumers' assessments of their own personal financial situation, their buying attitudes, and overall economic conditions. Now that we've clicked on the link, it will take us to a quote page for the indicator. I'll note here that we have a new design coming for these quote pages to match the quote pages for mutual funds and ETFs, and there's a lot of great benefits to the new design that's coming, so be on the lookout for that in the very near future. On quote pages, we get a lot of information in a single page, summary information, on the indicator itself, including definitions and where we source the data from, a chart showing movement in the indicator over time, an update schedule, and some summary statistics off on the right-hand side of the page. If you are searching for indicators by keyword in the main search box, you will be directed to this quote page directly. From here, if your goal is to get information out of YCharts and into the hands of your clients, that's a pretty simple thing to do. Let's say you wanted to include a chart of this data in an economic summary presentation for your clients. You'll notice at the top of the page is a tab labeled Interactive Chart. Clicking that tab keeps us on the quote page for the indicator, but opens up a fundamental charting module with it. When the new quote page redesign is available, it will direct you to our newly designed fundamental charting tool, but for now, we can just click View in New Design to get those same benefits. So once the chart loads, it'll pre-populate with some information, but it's very easy after just a couple clicks to make this look even more professional. For example, let's change the date range at the top to look a bit further back. We can select 10-year, for example. Then let's say I wanted to overlay recession bands. I just click Chart Options towards the top and select Show U.S. Recessions. You might note that we're currently in a gray band on the far right-hand side because we are technically in a recession, at least according to the National Bureau of Economic Research. So now I can more easily see how sentiment changed before, during, and hopefully soon, after a recession hits.
Greg, what's interesting when I look at this chart is that sentiment today isn't really as far down as it's been even 10 years ago. I bet people would be surprised to see that.
That's a great point, Allison. So let's highlight that fact. I can do so by annotating my chart. Just switch over to the Annotate tab in the top left. Click the plus sign next to our line. Then we can select what we want to annotate. In this case, let's go with the minimum and average values. So now it's even easier to see that sentiment levels today aren't nearly as low as they have been in the past. In fact, over the last 10 years worth of data, we're just slightly below average. One way to interpret this is to note that sentiment prior to February was at or near an all-time high for the period. People were feeling good about the economy and markets, and then this external force, the coronavirus, came in and upset the apple cart, so to speak. It could be that people still feel strongly that the economy was in a good place, and that as soon as we can knock out COVID, there's no reason we shouldn't be right back to where we were before. So let's finish things off for this chart. Let's look for presentation view and toggle that on in the top right corner. This will clean up the chart a bit, giving us the opportunity to add titles and notes and commentary to the bottom of the chart. And it will also include your firm's logo, assuming you've sent that over to your dedicated customer success manager. To get this chart out of YCharts and in front of your clients, all you have to do is right-click on the chart to copy or save it. Or, better yet, you can use the export and share drop-downs in the top right-hand corner. My clients especially like being able to take these charts and quickly put them into social media posts. The easiest way to do so is by clicking the share drop-down and select Copy Link. Then you just paste that link into your social media of choice, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and you're on your way to showing your firm off as a modern, tech-savvy, and influential business. The last quick tip I can give on charting is to point out that we have templates built out and ready for use. Just click on New Fundamental Chart Unsaved in the top left and select the first option, New from Template. We have a section of templates dedicated to econ data, so you can quickly build out a chart like this one related to mortgage rates, for example. And the key word here is template, so you can add to this chart if you would like. Simply switch over to the Input tab in the top left, and you can add other indicators if you wish, something like U.S. housing starts. Perfect. So to recap our first item, we use the Consumer Sentiment Index to represent overall consumer sentiment, or how the general populace are feeling about the economy and whether they're going to be confident enough to put their hard-earned money into circulation or batten down the hatches and try to preserve as much as possible. We were able to monitor this indicator using our new quote pages for economic indicators and create a chart to help communicate ideas to our clients using fundamental charting. Over to you, Allison.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg, for that introduction of our first indicator. I'm going to move on to our second indicator for today, and that's the unemployment situation. Here at YCharts, we want to make sure you're using the tool to the best of its functionality, especially given recent times, as a lot of you have had to field questions from your clients regarding unemployment numbers, and we want you to be prepared as you can to have that discussion. So I'm going to jump back into YCharts here. And navigating back to my dashboard, you'll notice that I have my default dashboard tab here, but you're also able to build 4 separate dashboards. So I myself have created another dashboard that's a sole housing for my economic indicators that I can always click on to keep abreast of some of the major indicators like unemployment. So just looking at this dashboard briefly, the way I've decided to organize it is U.S. unemployment numbers at the top, and then I have kind of a regional historical unemployment graph on the side. And I have some U.S. housing starts and continued claims for unemployment, just numbers that I know have been relevant and that I'm paying attention to. Further down, we'll get into some information about what the Fed is doing, as well as our coronavirus data that we've added. So I'm going to scroll back up and continue more about U.S. employment.
So, Allison, I see you have a few different numbers for unemployment on your watch list there. We hear a lot in the news that there's various ways to measure unemployment. Could you talk us through what some of the differences are between some of those indicators?
Yeah, definitely, Greg. I'm happy to. So just starting off from the top of the list, what I have here are U.S. continued claims for unemployment insurance and U.S. initial claims. When people file for unemployment, as reported by the U.S. Department of Labor, they're essentially filing for unemployment insurance that's backed by the government. As this information is updated weekly, it's seen as a much more reactive indicator for unemployment in the U.S., especially given recent times with COVID and how up and down our markets seem to be as far as unemployment. Having a more short-term indicator is a very good measure of future economic activity. Below that are the monthly unemployment rate numbers. The one you see on the very bottom here is that standard U.S. employment rate at 11% right now. This is the official unemployment rate. We know that the unemployment is the number of jobless U.S. adults ages 16 and up divided by the number of Americans employed in the civilian labor force. The difference here with these U5 and U6 unemployment rates is that U5 includes discouraged workers, so those who would work but have stopped looking in the past 6 months and thus are not captured by the standard U.S. unemployment rate. The U6 also adds in those workers who are working part-time purely for economic reasons. An example of this are members of the gig economy, so someone who might be driving a Lyft or an Uber who rather have a full-time job but have just been working part-time. They're also not captured by the U.S. unemployment. If I wanted to see this information historically, I'm able to just put that all into a chart, clicking on Create New Chart. I'm just going to give it a title. I'm just going to spell unemployment correctly. And then I can go ahead and add in those indicators. So U.S. unemployment rate pops up first, then specify U.S. U5 unemployment rate, and finally U.S. U6. I don't have to do anything else. I can go ahead and save my chart. And you see now I can also get a historical look at those unemployment numbers in relation to each other. What's interesting here is those figures have always had a somewhat constant spread between their values, but especially when COVID hit and our markets really had to slow down, we're seeing a huge jump in the U6 number. So those who are working part-time but would like to be working full-time only for economic reasons. So while the normal unemployment rate and the U5 numbers have gradually descended, the spread between the U5 and the U6 has really tightened. So what that tells me is there are more people who are employed in the market right now, but they're not working those full-time jobs that they'd like to, and in fact are just part-time workers. If people are not as fully employed as they like, consumer spending and demand will just not go as far in our economy.
Allison, what if I wanted one of these charts to live on top of the other? Can I switch those around?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as you build this dashboard, you definitely have the ability to kind of switch these modules around. Say you want more of the regional unemployment numbers near the top, you can just move this chart up and it's going to push that unemployment US chart down. So you can really manipulate this tab how you'd like to. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Greg to introduce our next indicator.
All right, perfect. So we are 2 indicators down, 3 more to go. Next up, number 3, we wanted to talk about fund flows. So what are fund flows? They're the cash inflow and outflow figures for funds and ETFs, and they can represent overall investor sentiment. Higher cash inflows equal higher optimism and vice versa. So you can look at flows with asset allocations and sectors to get a gauge of what people think about current and future market prospects. Inflows for the bond funds increasing dramatically, well, that would signal broad pessimism for the equities market. A question I regularly get is, where can I go to see fund flow data in YCharts? So in YCharts, we have several ways to analyze fund flows, whether it be at those higher kind of broad market levels or at the individual fund level. To start, we'll look at the individual fund level and the new quote pages for mutual funds and ETFs. Allison, could you switch back to YCharts, please? Perfect. And can I have you search for the Growth Fund of America? I believe the ticker is AGTHX. Perfect. So the new layout of these quote pages highlights flow data over different periods towards the middle of the screen. So you can get an idea of what other investors are thinking about the fund or view it as another data point about the broader market optimism or pessimism. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Let's say you wanted to track flow data for your own funds or your watch list of securities. So the easiest way to do that is to add flow data to your dashboard. You can simply flip over to your dashboard, and then in your fund watch list, you can flip over to the data tab. You'll note that by default, year-to-date fund flow data is brought in automatically. But if you wanted to search for a different type or a different time frame of flows, you can click the options button in the top right-hand corner and then select add metric to data view. And at the top, you can just search something like fund flows, and you can find the exact time frame that you're looking for.
I think I'll search for 3-month fund flows.
Perfect. So now we can see that metric on the data tab for the watch list, and you can even sort securities by that metric. Just click the column header.
So Greg, I'm seeing in this case the 3-month fund level for the American Growth Funds is negative, actually negative 2.2 billion or so. Can you tell us how to interpret that?
Yes, absolutely. So a negative number there means that there are more cash outflows than inflows. So this could either be a reflection of the individual fund, or it could signal something broader. If you reviewed other growth funds like the Growth Fund of America, or if you even looked at other equity funds of other types, and they were also down, that's likely a signal that something bigger picture is going on.
Wow, that's great. What if I wanted to use fund flows to identify new investment ideas?
Yeah, another good question, Allison. So we can leverage the fund screener tool for this. All you have to do is click Tools at the very top of the screen and select Fund Screener. This is going to allow us to identify funds that should either be looked at to be invested in, or to make sure we aren't behind the 8 ball and moving funds into other underperforming or other unfavorable investments. I helped a client create a really quick and easy screen the other day that looks something like this. So we started by filtering our universe of investments qualitatively with the Modify button at the top. We were only looking for open-ended funds, not ETFs or UITs or anything like that. So under the types category, we can expand open-end fund and select funds. My client also wanted to focus on a particular equity style. So next we selected large cap growth from the different equity style options. And that's it for the qualitative filters. Knowing that we can screen on almost any metric in YCharts, I added a quantitative filter by clicking the Add Filter button and searching for fund flows. After identifying the particular metric that we wanted to go with, we decided that what we actually wanted to see were the top 200 funds based on our chosen fund flow metric, meaning we wanted to see which funds had the most cash inflow. So I navigated to the Rank tab and typed in 200. Now I can come down to the results section of the screen and sort by our flow metric here to see the largest inflows at the top.
Wow, that's pretty cool, Greg. So what would someone then typically do with a list like this?
Well, you could go any number of directions with it, but most folks like to add some additional data to the screening results, which you can do with the metric and info column buttons towards the top right of the results section. Just don't forget to save your work after you add some of that data. I've had clients built out huge screens and then they navigate away and they had trouble recovering their screening results. So just make sure you save along the way. Other clients of mine will take the saved screening results and throw them into something like comp tables or time series so they can do some additional research.
Yeah, so how could we do something like that?
Yeah, so again, just make sure your screen is saved. You can give it a name there. And then we'll hop over to one of those other tools. Just go ahead and click on tools and we'll do comp tables for this example. To bring in the results of that previously saved screen, you don't actually have to type in the results one by one using the search box at the top. Instead, you can click the Lists button at the top and select Fund Screens under the category My Lists and navigate through the other tabs to locate your saved screen. So once our results are now in the table, you can browse for the various metrics that you want to use to compare all those different funds. You can search for them one by one using keywords in the search box, or you can click the Browse button as well, just to the right of that. Note, we do also have some saved metric sets that you could leverage. So if you click the metric sets drop down and then click Open Metric Set, you should see some examples in there that you could use. Things related to performance, risk measures, so on and so forth. Now, the last thing I wanted to show off in relation to our third topic, fund flows, is that our ridiculously talented product team has put together a report. Actually, it's a couple reports summarizing monthly fund flow data for both American markets and Canadian markets. These reports have been consumed more than most other materials we have produced for our clients, and they're really great. Allison, could you please pull up the example report I sent over previously?
Sure thing, Greg. So you sent it to me, but I also subscribed myself, and I got this sent directly to my inbox. I was able to download it just today.
And I know we just released June's report, so this should be hot off the presses then. So you'll notice on the front page here of this report, it starts off with an economic outlook, which helps provide some context for the flow data that you're going to be seeing in the subsequent pages. On this first page, you'll find benchmark index data, rate information, and data on other leading indicators. On the next few pages, you'll see flow data for both funds and ETFs. High inflows, greatest outflows. You'll even see performance numbers as well. These securities represent different categories and styles of both equity and fixed income securities. Very quickly, I'm able to glance through the report and see that there's a lot more green on the fixed income side of the fence, which makes sense as investors want to be more defensive and take on less risk in these times.
So how would someone get access to these reports?
All you have to do is sign up with a quick form, which we'll provide in a link when we send out our follow-up email after this webinar recording is available. The other way is to simply ask your dedicated customer success manager, and they'll send you over that link.
Thanks, Greg, for that. It's interesting to know that even if flows aren't a major part of your investment process, that information can also be used as a major economic indicator. I'm going to switch back to our presentation now and introduce our fourth indicator for today, COVID stats. So Greg, I think you're also going to talk to us a little bit about the COVID stats that were added to YCharts just earlier this year.
Yes, absolutely, Allison. So obviously the big ongoing event that's been hanging over the world and this economy is the coronavirus crisis. So quick little story. We knew our clients were looking at these numbers on a daily basis, and their clients were going to be bringing them concerns related to the pandemic and what it means for their accounts. And so in the early days of the pandemic, a few of our team members came to the realization that we had all the tools necessary to help and bring coronavirus metrics into our platform. This way, our clients would be able to get all the regular financial data they need, but also stay on top of and report on the various coronavirus numbers that they're reviewing on a daily basis so that their clients can also stay informed. I think coronavirus data being in YCharts is a great example of how agile and dynamic our various teams can be when working towards getting new and useful things into the system when it matters most. The majority of these data points were available in early March. Today, YCharts has over 1,000 different economic indicators in the system related to the virus. The data is broken out by countries and states. We even have things like number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. So you can treat these indicators just like any other economic indicator we have in the system. So Allison, if you could flip back over to YCharts.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll notice when I get on my economic indicators tab, I actually have some of those indicators summed up right here, especially for Illinois as we're YCharts and we're located in Chicago.
Oh, that's great. Perfect, Allison. Thank you. So she can actually click on any one of those and it'll take you to that indicator's quote page. Like before when we were looking at consumer sentiment, for the purpose of using this data in client communication, you could easily chart this data using the interactive charting tab. One of the more common use cases for corona-related indicators is to automate the reporting of these metrics with our email report tool. So once Allison saves the chart that she'd like to build out for her coronavirus data, so what Allison can do is add a few more coronavirus-related indicators to this chart here. She's just going to search by keyword, it looks like, and find a few that she likes. Perfect. And once she has the chart looking the way she wants it, in the top left, she can click on where it says unsaved and save the chart. And now we can get into that automated communication piece. So what Allison can do is click on Tools in the top of the screen and select Email Reports. To create a new email report, all you have to do is select the Create New button in the top right-hand corner. And this will give you an opportunity to name your report. So you can call it something COVID related. And you can write a short description for it if you would like. You can also select the frequency with which the email is going to be sent to you, daily, weekly, monthly, so on and so forth. And then finally, all you have to do is click the Add Module button. And this is where you're going to be able to select your chart. So just find where it says Fundamental Chart. You might have to scroll a little bit. And the next page is going to have you select the saved chart that you just made. So now that that's added, that chart will be sent to you with up-to-date information on the period or the frequency that you selected when you were setting up the email report.
Very convenient, Greg. Is there anything pre-made that our clients can leverage to help save some time instead of going through and building this all themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you switch back to Fundamental Chart, using our new charting templates that we have available, all you have to do is select Unsaved in the top left and then select New from Template. We have several charts related to coronavirus data we have in the system, so just select that category and you'll see all the different charts that we have built out already. You could start with any one of these and manipulate it to look and feel exactly how you want it. Perfect. So now, Allison, we're on our fifth and final indicator that we wanted to discuss today. I believe that's interest rates and inflation.
That's right, Greg. So our last indicator for today that we think you need to be following is interest rates and inflation. Everyone pays attention when the Federal Open Market Committee comes out with a new announcement. They usually meet once every month and a half, and they make declarations about interest rates, forward guidance for the future, and this is what is going to make a big impact on the markets. Most important of which is the federal funds rate, as this is the basis of many consumer and business lending rates. That's going to really greatly impact financing costs and decisions basically across the board. So YCharts is a good way for you to utilize this. We do import a lot of that FOMC announcement data, and we also have some templates that I'm going to show you now that you can utilize. I'm going to jump back into YCharts, and flipping back to that dashboard that I spoke on earlier, and I'm going to scroll down to the indicators that watch my Fed activity. So as you can see here, I have some of the information related to the Fed, information about U.S. debt and the domestic financial sectors, FOMC meeting upcoming date, so I know when that is going to next meet. I also have the target federal funds rate lower limit and upper limit. To help me visualize some of this, I've gone ahead and created a chart on the lower right side of my screen. So you can see the Fed will raise interest rates to help squash some of that uptick in the business cycle and help combat inflation. But in times of economic recession and difficulties like we've been experiencing recently, they're going to lower those interest rates. So I can even see here that the Fed started lowering interest rates before we even hit the COVID crisis in earlier of this year. Now that we are in such a crisis with COVID and many people out of work, the Fed has put its interest rates level at basically near zero. We can't go any lower than that unless we decided to go negative. Above that, I also decided to put the Fed's dual mandate. So our federal bank in the U.S. has two things they always have to be looking for to control: the U.S. inflation rate, which I have here, and the U.S. unemployment rate. You can see that's been pretty steady over time until the unemployment rate really shot up during recent times, and actually inflation has gone down. So I want to go a little further into what data we have from the Fed. If you just go ahead and click on this indicator, like Greg said, we're getting new indicator pages in really just a matter of a couple days, so look out for that really soon. But from here, I can also look into the actual source for this data. What's nice about this is if you want to look more into the Fed and some of the relevant data we have out there, you can just click on that source and you're taken to the page that's going to have links to all the other data sources. If you wanted to learn more about the commercial paper from the Fed, if you're interested to see the U.S. share of wealth held by different wealth categories in the U.S. Continuing down, you see that Federal Open Market Committee. You see the data there and our latest value from that June 10th meeting. We can also see information such as consumer credit, some exchange rates, as well as these interest rates. So something I see is really popular, used by a lot of people to look for recessionary indicators, are Treasury rates. I'm going to click on this 10-year Treasury rate, and again, we're brought back to that indicator page, and we can see we source it straight from the Federal Reserve. And I actually want to look at the chart of this because something people really like to do is chart the 10-year Treasury rate compared to the 2-year. Clicking it so I can view in the new design, I'm going to go ahead and add that 2-year Treasury rate to my screen. Now people see it as a big indicator if the 2-year were to ever cross above the 10-year, because then it seems that short-term investments are no longer as safe as maybe a longer-term investment if you were unsure about the near future of economic conditions. A lot what people like to do and that I see is the ability to chart the 10 2-year spread. We do have a spread option if you want to create a ratio or spread or correlation on fundamental charts. You can go down here and click create. But a neat little YCharts hack that might save you a lot of time is we actually already have that as a metric. So if I go ahead and click in and type in, and you can see that just below on economic data right there. Usually when people mention the yield curve, they're talking about a specific kind of curve.
That's a great point to bring up, Allison. I actually get asked that a lot by my clients. Where can they go to see yield curve data? So can you just highlight that for us real quick?
Yeah, definitely. So just to explain, I mean, you're able to see yield data for specific treasuries based on their maturities. I mean, they're broken up by their different maturity rates. But when people say the yield curve, they're usually talking about a specific kind of yield curve. And that's the one that looks at the treasury rates today for various maturities of these treasuries. So we're not able to look at it on this chart, but we actually have an Excel template that's going to do the job for us. So I'm going to Tools and then down to Excel. And just go to templates here. We do have a macroeconomic section, which is really relevant for our today's topic. And if you click on Treasury Yield Curve, that's going to download right to your desktop. I'm just going to open it up here and bring it up so you all can see. As you can see, we're seeing that for today's value, how that curve goes up, and you can compare it to 6 months ago and last year. So this is all nicely for you in an Excel template that you can take and copy this as an image to paste it somewhere. You also might recognize it from our economic deck that we produce once a quarter, which I'm going to show you how to get to now. Going back to YCharts, our new econ decks will always live under the support topic section. And if you haven't noticed, we did a new redesign to hopefully make the support topics a lot more intuitive for our users. I see presentation materials listed here. I'm going to click on that. Click again on presentation materials, and here's where you'll see the econ summary decks that come out every quarter. I have one open on my end right here. And clicking on that, you can see right here on slide number 8 is that familiar yield curve chart, which is where we pulled it on the template, as well as an actual table of what the interest rate movements were like in the past quarter. The final workflow I want to show you for Fed activity is really similar to what Greg has already shown us, and that's an email report. If I go to Tools and then Email Reports, what I'm going to do here, creating a new report is, let's say I want to make a Fed report for myself. I could click on this quarterly, add a module, and then I want to use this economic calendar. So it's going to tell me indications of upcoming release date times and the last value. So I know what to look for whenever I get this email report. Clicking on Next here, I already have it as a watch list. Click on Watch List, and then scroll down. I have a lot of different ones, and I see it here in this Fed activity that you might recognize was the name for my dashboard. I'm just going to make sure to add that. And to give you a preview of what that's going to look like, the next time I get this email report, I'm going to see the next release for the FOMC meeting and the information on those targeted federal funds rate, upper and lower limit, as well as those outstanding domestic financial sectors, debt, and home mortgages. What's nice about this is when you get this email report to your inbox, you can easily forward this on to any of your clients if you'd like to keep them abreast of what is also going on in the market. So you're able to communicate that not just with yourself, but also make a report that you're able to send on to maybe those in your workplace or actual clients you want to keep in touch with. So I think that just about wraps us up. I'm going to hand it over to Greg to give it of our conclusion today.
Yes, indeed. So that does wrap us up. We've reviewed 5 key indicators that we feel are things to keep an eye on with the current state of things: consumer sentiment and health, employment, COVID-19, fund flows, and interest rates and inflation. We've used a lot of new tools and data sets like new quote pages for economic indicators, our newly added database for coronavirus information, along with some old standbys like fundamental charting, dashboards and watch lists, screening tools, and email reports. Hopefully, we've been able to give everyone a few fresh ideas on how you can pull the economic data more efficiently to stay on top of the markets and create various client communications that are sure to move the needle. As a reminder, like all previous webinars, this webinar is being recorded and posted to the webinars page under support and then support topics, and then webinars. So again, big thank you to Allison for organizing things, but most of all, thank you to our clients. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here today. So until next time, everyone, be well and take care of each other.
Thanks, Greg, for the well wishes, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope you found this webinar useful and can take with you some of the new indicators to be mindful of as we watch the impact of the economy and markets during this time. I do want to reiterate, like Greg said, a recording of this webinar will be sent to all attendees and posted on YCharts in case you need to review anything we went over or to share it with your colleagues. For questions you might have submitted during the presentation, we'll be reaching out soon with the information you're looking for. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. We always appreciate any feedback you might have for us, and if you have any questions regarding what we covered today, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.